Hello, everyone, in this early morning in Riga and those who are watching online as well. As a dance dramaturg, I'm also a bit choreographer. I'm often asked by questions, who is a dance dramaturg? That is a relatively new position in a dance and movement research, which emerged maybe in 70s. At the same time, in West Europe, such positions started to exist, and in the United States. And as long as I work now in Germany, I refer to German context a lot as well. And here, the famous example of a dance dramaturg and choreographer collaboration was Pina Bausch and Raymond Hoge, who Raymond was originally a writer, a theater critic, and he was writing some reviews to Pina. She didn't like them, met with him, and after that they became collaborators for many years. So my path also came like this a bit. I started from a dance critic at some point, and the more I watched, the more I couldn't ignore what is happening. And I graduated from performance studies faculty in Hamburg University. Unfortunately, this faculty doesn't exist anymore. Otherwise, I would recommend it to everyone. And after that, I work as a dance dramaturg and movement researcher with body politics questions, partially with site-specific questions. But today, I would like to talk about a certain strategy in a dance dramaturgy, which is related to artistic research. It is, well, any movement research can be at the same time artistic research, and artistic research can be movement research. And I'm talking today about movement generative systems, how we generate movement and how we create dance performances. What are those movement generative systems? These are actually agents. These are little dramaturgies or big dramaturgies of tasks and rules which are set during the research process of dance development. One of first things we think when we start movement research in a dance is improvisation. It is one of the basic strategies. And it already can be, the improvisation itself can be already a movement generative system, as long as any pre-given set appears. For example, if you ask a group of performers to start to move in the space, that already creates some tasks. So it means that they should not stay at the same place, they should move. And some limitations appear. Or once any free movement and improvisation starts and you add a comment, feel free to do what your body feels. But it is not that free as we think, because there is a certain optic. You should look inside of your body. You should look inside of your body impulses. It means you more care about your inner impulses and less about external environment and impulses which you get from maybe the space. So even such two simple tasks like start to move in the space and feel free to do what your body feels, they together already create a complex set of tasks. You have to move in the space, you have to move with attention to your body. And that becomes a complex dynamic system, not just authentic movement without any reflection. So movement generative systems are going beyond just improvisation, and they frame the impulses. The dramaturgy here is the structural architecture and collection of creative strategies. So each dramaturg, in this sense, is a collector of his own set of tools and principles. And today I will talk about a few examples of such collections. The dramaturgy or the dramaturgical agency, I would say, it doesn't belong only to dramaturg when we're talking about movement generative systems. This dramaturgical agency can belong to any of collaborators who influence on the process, who bring their own bodies, and particularly the dancers who make their own movement proposals. Any of them have an agency in the process. Of course, when we talk about movement research laboratories as well, this movement research system has a can have a dramaturgical agency itself. And now I have a task to share my screen.
Если вы устали или вам ужасно интересно, как это выглядит со стороны, можно по одному выходить и наблюдать.
So that is a movement research laboratory which became a start for the piece called The Striker. And the work was initially devoted to the question how a desire to fight starts. So that is a very wide issue, a very wide question here. How a desire to strike and to fight starts. And here in Moscow in 2019, when it was possible, in a closed space of a dance studio, a group of performers were put into such a movement generative system, which was a movement research laboratory, where each single participant brought their own personal body archive, personal memories, and personal fears to create a material which later was used for generating the performance. So it is an initial phase. It is not a performance itself yet, but in a way it was a bit even a therapeutic process, because any participant through body could express certain states of suppressive protest feeling, which was actually a very relieving solution for the totalitarian atmosphere in Moscow, which was already in 2019 there. And that was partly a movement video documentation of all the processes which we brought during this laboratory. So what I'm trying to do here is to create a set of rules and tasks. From one side, the attention of performers is challenged by limitation of their options. And from another side, they are challenged to be more precise. The whole set of choreography which is developed can be fed to a movement generative system as a fuel, as a material. And as a result, it will be proceed by the decisions which are done by the performers. The memory of the performers, their body archive, is the most influential element inside of this permanently morphing and changing, refining parameters of the system. My task here was to create such a flowing architecture which guides in the direction of the raised question. In this case, how the desire to fight emerges in our body. And during the research, we were getting more and more precise in the way. That is what I call a task-based creation. Now the end of the movie. And how can I stop screen sharing here? I wonder. Like that was my modest experience in creating movement generative systems. Another great worldwide example, which I would like to reflect on, is Max Stewart and her company Damaged Goods. They are choosing as a method to work with impossible tasks. And that is what she's talking about her this work with impossible tasks on workshops and during her movement research. That is a quote from Max Stewart. In my workshops, I use scores and exercises I've developed over years to take people on trips. Some are entering a fiction, such as Imagine You Are Dead, and some are about disruption and commitment, like Change, in which I ask the students to change physical or emotional states abruptly on command. Some are somewhere in between, like impossible tasks, in which I ask the dancers to do things they cannot do, such as be in two places at once or disappear. And there is also a way to work with the task, as well as another famous example by worldwide known choreographer Deborah Hay and her score called No Time to Fly. This is open source score. So No Time to Fly is a PDF document, open source. That is how it looks like. It's created in 2010, and it is absolutely like open for anyone to start to work with. Although it's called Solo Dance Score, I saw many examples when people used it in groups. Since 2010, there are many examples of using the score. You can find them online, and every group of people or every single person interpreted it anew, because that is a example of movement generative system. It is not a prescripted partiture score of choreography as we can traditionally imagine it. So as I said, it can be also downloaded easily, just No Time to Fly from Deborah Hay. And what is it about? That is a set of limitations and set of precisions. I will just read a single a moment. I sing a wordless song that arises from and combines joy and sorrow into a single melody that resonates through my stilled bones, barely suppressing a sense of personal history. My face reflects the transience of joy and sorrow. That is what a little input. It works with your emotions more than with your body, but it's getting more difficult with every note Deborah adds. I hear the song as my voice leaves my body. I am intentionally unguarded because I rarely allow myself to partake in unprotected experiences, and so on. Like around 13 pages, not very big text-wise, and she has also her visual scores. For example, here on the right side, you can see how joy and sorrow at once look. You can deconstruct this graphic as you feel, imagining all these little strokes inside of your body, or imagine that these are vectors of your body move on a stage when you look on yourself on top, or these are all just the little vectors which are coming from different joints of your body. You cannot get any clear answer of from the border what it is, but you can interpret it as you feel like, because she mixes here movement tasks, emotions, rules, restrictions, and directions, challenging the whole attention and memory of a dancer and supporting a dancer to make a choice. That is this attention to awareness of a dancer and this challenge for choice making is actually an initial task, I would say, of a movement generative system. As I said, there are a lot of works based on Deborah's score, and you can easily check them out. The dance and drama professor from Canada, Bill Hansen, notes that movement generative, she calls it performance generative system, can be not only task-based, but also be a systematic generation. And such example of systematic generation I would like to show now is a laboratory, this we saw already, is a laboratory of João Ferreira, which is called real-time composition. So we still have a few minutes, and I will open a larger video here. So João Ferreira talks about his method, real-time composition, like this. It has been developed and systemized. Its main framework was the need to create a system of composition that could be shared by collaborators along the creative process. And in a second stage, it was asserted as a tool for exploring modalities of dramaturgic writing within the dance field. Since it was actually created in 2005, and since 2005, it has been asserting the territory of research at large, thus widening its range of interest and use beyond the boundaries of dance and even art. At the first phase, he gives a task. The space remains open until somebody takes the decision to act upon it, starting the game. The decision to act has to be absolutely voluntarily. Only so you can assume responsibility for the acts you carry out. In short, the first action, oh, that's already over. It was a short video of how it looked, tiny example. And João Ferreira finalizes that the first action worked as an event, the second proposed a direction, and the third confirmed that direction. These are the first steps for the initial conditions of the system to be established. Turn a collective sensibility to those initial conditions within an auto-organizing process in which there is no leader or script. Is a challenge of this praxis, and the only way to set up a line of thought which is at once open and steady. And such a movement generative system is a systematic generation. Opposite to my previous examples with me personally, Max Stewart and Deborah Hay, we are together in one row, which were task-based creation. The systematic generation is like more self-organizing, auto-organizing process, and systematic generation has even more agency as a movement generative system. Such described movement generative systems like task-based and systematic generation, they both share artistic focus on memory and perception, on awareness. And the aim is to challenge, adapt, and recalibrate perceptual habits and memories of performers within the system. They are embodied form of artistic research, and they are dynamic dramaturgical agents themselves. That is pretty much everything I wanted to mention today, talking about movement generative systems. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you for your interesting presentation. I have a question. When you have experimented with this system yourself, can you tell a bit about the feedback of the dancers and maybe the audience? Have you had any certain performances with the audience?
Talking about the performers, many of them find it, because you work with the memory and with attention and with awareness of each participant, that is internal process. And although I'm not a psychotherapist and I don't go there, many people, participants, found it in a way healing. Additionally to the example of working with a protesting body in Russia, it was a bit also healing effect, because you couldn't scream, you couldn't protest outside, but all the suppressed strategies were brought to the stage, to the rehearsal space, to the studio. So there was also this way to work with the suppressed, like on a political level. But talking about movement generative system per se, this is definitely a very democratic strategy, because as I said, as a dramaturg, I don't have all the agency, and I don't have all the power. So power relations, they are also different, which gives people actually a good feeling of creating and so co-creating and being co-authors of the process. The second part, yeah. The second part of the question was about the audience. Actually, what was the feedback of the audience? The audience sees this process, doesn't see this process, doesn't witness it. It sees only the result.
Yes, very interesting. Thank you. Does our audience have any questions? And in Zoom, you can post your questions. You're welcome to do that. We have Zoom audience and participating audience in Riga. Does our audience have any questions? Not at the moment.
Not in the morning.
Yes, but thank you. Very interesting, says the audience. Yes, thank you very much for your contribution. Greetings to Hamburg.